What are symptoms of major depression not many people are aware of? Apathy. I still remember the day my parents sat me down and had to talk about how they suspected that I was dealing with depression. I told them I wasn't sad, just that I didn't care about much anymore. And they were like, yeah, that's what depression is. Depression isn't just big sad. More often, it's just numb.
That moment really hits home. I remember a similar experience with a friend once. They were always smiling, but inside, they felt completely empty. It was hard for them to explain it. Just like you said, it's not always about being sad. Sometimes, it's about that lack of feeling. We talked a lot, and I think just being there helped a bit, but it's a tough thing to navigate.
If someone is showing the normal symptoms of depression, albeit fatigue, loss of interest, no focus, but then suddenly, almost overnight, becomes calm, seems to be happier, and starts giving items away, it may be a sign of a deeper depression that may lead to tragedy and should be addressed immediately.
It's a tough situation when you see someone go from struggling to suddenly seeming fine. I had a friend who did something similar. He was down for a while but then made this big shift. Everyone thought he was doing better, but it turned out he was just masking how he felt. It's important to check on people, even when they seem okay. You never really know what's going on inside.
Something a lot of people don't talk about with depression is focusing on the past and mistakes you have made causing you to spiral into dark thoughts. When I was on the pill, it made me experience true depression. I thought I had experienced it in the past, but I hadn't. And what a horrible place it was.
It's tough when you realize how the past weighs you down. I remember a time when I felt trapped in my own thoughts, going over mistakes I made. It was like a loop I couldn't escape. Then, trying to manage things with medication only made it worse. That feeling of hopelessness is pretty isolating. You don't really know how deep it can go until you're there. Just taking it one day at a time can help.
Being lazy. You are constantly tired and beating yourself up about how dishes get stacked up, your room getting messier and messier. Meanwhile, all your brain is able to do is playing video games or being useless in any other way, because your brain just simply doesn't have the energy to do anything else while you're drowning in your own shit, figuratively speaking. Also, you just simply lose parts of yourself. You become a husk of who you were.
I get that feeling. There are times when I find myself just sitting around, not really doing much. Dishes pile up, clothes get messy, and I just can't find the motivation to tackle it. My mind feels foggy, so I end up zoning out with video games instead. It's like watching parts of myself slip away, and it's tough to confront. Sometimes, it helps just to acknowledge it and take small steps back.
Being really grossed out by dating prospects. Not having a partner could be one source of worsening depression for a lot of people, but for me, it just makes me feel like no matter how well I function on the outside, letting someone in to see all the twigs and school glue barely holding up the high-functioning front makes me far too vulnerable and therefore uncomfortable. My friends think it's asexuality, and it could be, but I think for people who can relate, the desire to remain alone stems from depression rather than sexuality preferences.
I get where you're coming from. It's tough to put yourself out there when it feels like there's a lot going on beneath the surface. For some, being alone feels safer than showing all those hidden parts. Sometimes it's not about lack of interest, but just wanting to keep things simple and not deal with that vulnerability. Friends have their opinions, but you know your own feelings best.
Not talking much, one of the easiest to identify, yet most ignored symptom. When someone you know is talking way less than usual and feel enlightened when you ask them questions in a way that you care about them, they're most likely depressed and don't know or don't want to describe it and be a burden.
I've seen this with a friend before. He used to chat a lot, but then went quiet for a while. I noticed he perked up when I asked how he was doing. It was clear he was holding back, probably thinking he didn't want to drag anyone down. Sometimes, just asking and really listening can help. It's easy to miss the signs if you're not paying attention.
Hygiene, especially with showering or even brushing teeth. With depression, even the little things that seem basic feel really, really hard. Also, your eating habits change. If you tend to eat more, you'll likely end up eating less, and vice versa. During peak depression, I found it hard to do anything and just stayed in bed to the point a dent formed in the shape of me.
It's tough when even basic things feel like climbing a mountain. I remember a time when I dealt with a bit of that myself. Some days I'd just sit in bed, staring at the ceiling, really not wanting to move. It's strange how quickly routines can fall apart. Eating felt like a chore, and getting up was a real challenge. Just taking small steps sometimes made a difference, though.
It's very difficult to register even the largest of achievements. I achieved so many unbelievable things, and all I'd feel was a very small sense of relief it was over. Never accomplishment, joy, or anything like that. I was just so unbelievably neutral to everything and found joy in nothing. I didn't understand what was going on.
I can relate to that feeling. Sometimes, even after reaching big goals, it feels more like a weight lifted than a celebration. I had a friend who went through a similar phase. They worked hard for years, but when they finally got what they wanted, it felt empty. It took them time to realize that it was about the journey and finding small joys along the way, not just the end result.
For me, 13 of my 25 years of life suffering is comedy and the attempt to make other people happy. I make the most horrendous jokes known to man and am usually serious when making my suicidal jokes, but for some reason, I am the loved one at my workplace. I don't know if it's everyone or just who I am, but I have been told I am a favorite, and even in the worst of times can make others smile. It may be the years or depression or who I am as a person, but I definitely account some of my comedy to my sadness, and realizing tragedy is in hand with comedy. I will say and do anything for a laugh if it means I can keep someone else out of this torment I have been living through. I spend my years as little I have left trying to show that even if I have failed this task that is life, others can and will move forward. Love.
It's interesting how humor can come from tough experiences. Making people laugh while dealing with your own struggles is a unique way to connect with others. It seems like you found a way to turn your pain into something positive for those around you. That balance between tragedy and comedy is vital for many, and it sounds like your friends appreciate that part of you. Sometimes, just being there for others can make a real difference.
What bothers me the most about the public perception of depression is that everyone gets depressed from time to time. There is a huge difference between feeling down because of something that happened to you in life and feeling down for no reason. Feeling down for no reason is depression, while the other is not. Thinking of killing yourself all day for no reason is not the same as feeling down because you got fired. The helplessness of feeling down for no reason has a huge toll on your mental well-being. It would have been fine if I had a reason, but sometimes your brain is the enemy and there is no logic or reason behind it.
I get how that can be tough to understand. I've had times when I felt off without any clear reason. It's frustrating, especially when people assume it's just a phase or something you can shake off. The mind can be tricky, and sometimes it feels like there's this weight holding you down for no reason at all. I think it's important to talk about it more openly, you know?
I doubt this is a universal experience, but I have been unable to remember my dreams during severe periods of depression. When I had my first major depressive episode that lasted through most of high school, there were several years where I stopped being able to remember my dreams. When my depression improved somewhat during college and into my early 20s, I started having dreams again and kept a dream journal for a while. The last few years, I've fallen into the worst depression I've experienced so far and am back to not remembering my dreams, which is deeply sad because I think dreaming is beautiful and I miss it. I'm waiting patiently for the pendulum to swing back and to be able to dream and to feel again.
It's tough when depression takes away something like dreaming. I had a friend who went through something similar. They lost touch with their dreams during a rough patch. When things got a bit better, they started remembering again and even kept a journal. But when the struggles returned, the dreams faded out again. It's a weird cycle, just waiting for things to change. I can relate to the feeling of missing that part of life.
Wherever you are, usually helped by someone else. You have nearly zero capacity, energy/motivation/will to do anything or go anywhere. It feels like you're drowning in a life vacuum by even existing, so even entertaining the idea of spending more energy/willpower on anything beyond that just feels crazy and unmanageable. I'm constantly thinking, I'm barely holding it together, being completely still, staring into the abyss. Please don't ask more of me, or I'll break into tears again.
I get it. There are days where just getting out of bed feels like too much. You sit there, staring at nothing, and the idea of doing anything else is exhausting. Sometimes people don't see how deep that feeling runs. Just existing can be a struggle. It's hard to explain to others when you feel like you're just trying to keep your head above water and every little thing feels overwhelming.
I think a lot of people don't understand the apathy part. Everything becomes painfully boring to the point that everything takes a ton of energy to do. It makes a lot of really basic things you have to do really daunting tasks. Think of the most boring thing you've ever done where you're looking at the clock and feel like a minute is taking hours. Apply that feeling to every single task in life. It's exhausting and so frustrating.
I can relate to that. Sometimes, even simple tasks feel overwhelming. Like when I had to clean my room one day. It was just me staring at the mess, trying to find the motivation. Time felt like it stood still, and every minute dragged on as I struggled to get started. It's strange how things that should be easy can become exhausting when you're not in the right headspace.
Being able to shine the brightest while among friends. Laughing the loudest. But once you're home alone, you're a total mess again, completely drained from social interactions. Depressed people often tend to seem happy in the eyes of others, having such easy, perfect lives. But truth is totally different. Also, time feels like it's running and also not. You're in a state where every second feels like an eternity to finally pass. But when you look back, suddenly 3 years are over that just felt like maybe 6 months.
It's interesting how we can put on a mask for friends, acting like everything's fine. I used to be the one joking around, but when I'd get home, it felt like a switch flipped. All that energy just vanished. Time also feels weird. Moments stretch out, yet years blend together. You think you have it all under control, but it's like living in a dream where you're not really awake.
Physical feelings of loneliness. Being so lonely that your body starts to hurt. Not a, why can't I have a partner kind of loneliness. A why can't I socialize like a normal person kind of loneliness, where you constantly blame yourself for being lonely, but still not being able to do anything about it. It's also something that starts depression, speaking of my own experience.
I get that. Loneliness can feel heavy, like it's a weight pressing down on you. You think about reaching out, but the anxiety kicks in. Sometimes you blame yourself for not being social, which just adds to it. It's tough when that feeling starts to spiral. I've had moments like that too, where it feels like you're stuck in your own head and can't find a way out. It's a challenging place to be.
Not following what people are saying because it doesn't really matter anyway. You lose track of conversations. Sometimes even the songs you listen to you think aren't for you, love songs, or those more celebratory. I can't describe it. You zone out at the drop of a hat mid-conversation because you have this voice in the back saying you have no stake in anything and nothing valuable to contribute. It all ends in a blank stare, and you'll get asked about it and have to come up with some lie to obscure your disinterest in the topic.
I get that. Sometimes you just drift away during conversations, and it feels like there's a barrier. It can be tough to engage when you think it doesn't matter. You catch fragments of songs, but they miss the mark too. When someone asks what's up, it just turns into a quick dodge. It's easier to nod along and keep it light than to explain that blank space in your head.
All I can say is I'm glad I stumbled across this page. I've struggled with severe swings for the past few years, and I still go through wild swings, but they're becoming less severe over time. To all the fighters out there, fighting silent wars, you're not alone and you are strong enough to get through. 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time. Whatever the duration, fight.
It's good to see someone sharing their experience. I've had moments where it felt like everything was a struggle. It's just about taking things day by day. Sometimes even minute by minute. There's a certain strength in just pushing through, even when it feels tough. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our battles. Everyone's dealing with something, and it's okay to seek support.
Someone else mentioned the never-ending feeling of being tired and having no motivation to get out of bed. A symptom that follows this is the immense guilt of being locked to your bed in a state of mental exhaustion. Like you know it shouldn't be this hard to function and you know you're wasting your life away. But sleeping feels like a giant hug and the only way to escape. The tasks of leaving the bed and live life feels like climbing a mountain.
Yeah, I get that. It's tough when just getting out of bed feels like a major challenge. I've had days where I just wanted to stay in that comfy spot, feeling like everything else was too much. You know it's not easy, and the guilt can be heavy. Sometimes, just lying there feels safer than facing the world. It's a constant battle between comfort and the pressure to do more.
I once heard someone say depression is the opposite of expression, and I fully agree with that. When I am okay, I engage with my hobbies, I am active, I love yapping, speaking my mind, being authentically me, I am more spontaneous and brave. When it gets bad, I go inward. I lose the energy to talk. I barely even think of conversation topics honestly. My brain either goes empty or obsesses over one specific thing. It's like I become a shell of who I really am, and I get stuck in this freeze mode where I can't do much. Someone who doesn't know me may think it's introversion or shyness, even laziness or arrogance. But really it's just what being depressed looks like for me.
That's a pretty relatable perspective. I've seen friends go through similar phases. When they're up, they're lively and full of ideas. When it drops, they retreat, and it's hard to reach them. It's easy to misjudge their silence as something else. Sometimes, just being there without pushing too hard helps. Understanding that it's not about being lazy or introverted might make a difference, even if it takes time to get back to themselves.
Just going through the motions of life. Wanting to escape the present reality of the day. Feeling like a fake when I can go out in public with a smile on my face. Everyday things seem like impossible tasks. Cleaning the kitchen is the mountain I have to climb at the moment. Saying, I'm fine, and feeling like a liar.
I get that feeling. Sometimes, just getting through the day feels like a lot. You might see others smiling and wonder how they do it. Simple tasks become overwhelming, and you just want to hide away. It's tough putting on a brave face when inside, you feel different. It makes sense to feel like you're living a contradiction. Just know it's okay to feel this way.
Being a perfectionist. Only because that's the closest name it could be given. It's not that you want something to be perfect, it's that whatever you do never seems good enough to you. You don't know what being good enough feels like. You are your biggest critic, and sometimes it truly rises to the level of self-hate.
I get that. I've had moments where I just wasn't satisfied with what I did. It feels like chasing an unattainable goal. You keep pushing, but the finish line keeps moving. Sometimes it's hard to step back and appreciate what you accomplish. It's tiring being your own worst critic, and it takes a toll on you. Just learning to be okay with good enough is a struggle for many.
I wasn't majorly depressed, but I was going down a bad path. I remember I stopped daydreaming about the future. No more driving in the car thinking about saving people or winning a fight. It was just go to work, go home. Nothing could ever get better because I couldn't see any possibilities. Now, when I think of silly daydreams, I remind myself that's part of me thinking what could be better.
It's interesting how our mindset affects our outlook on life. I had a phase where I just zoned out, moving through day-to-day routines. Like you, I lost sight of those daydreams. Then one day, I remembered how much I enjoyed imagining different scenarios. It reminded me that even small shifts in thinking can unlock new possibilities. Daydreaming can really help in finding some light again.
It can sometimes be something you feel 100% in your body, even though you feel pretty okay. I've been mentally/emotionally okay, and it's like my overall optimism kept deflecting every hit to my body instead of my mind. Then I started getting periods every 2 weeks, and weirdly high levels of fatigue, and skin issues and belly issues, and of course I rolled my eyes at the doctor when she suggested stress/depression because I was fine. But when the stressors in my life passed, and I started on the medication, all the body's symptoms went away.
It's interesting how the body can respond to stress even when your mind feels fine. I had a similar experience. I thought I was handling everything well, but my health started to decline. I pushed through, convincing myself it was just life. But once I acknowledged the stress and made some changes, things improved. It's a reminder that mental and physical health are connected more than we think.
At my worst, when I had already lost everything, my home, my job, and had to drop out of university because of my depression, I needed to have a screenshot of a notes page with make bed, brush hair, brush teeth, go outside as my wallpaper on my phone as a reminder that even if I need to get back into bed and close the curtains after doing those 4 things, I needed to do those 4 things. 6 years later, I still have big ups and big downs, but I've held my job for 3 years with progression and live independently again. Depression is horrific. But if you're struggling right now, I promise you can make it. Just small steps one day at a time.
That sounds really tough. It's interesting how sometimes the smallest tasks can feel overwhelming. Using that notes page as a reminder was a smart move. It's cool to hear you've made some progress after all that. Life can go up and down, but just taking those small steps does make a difference. It's a good reminder for anyone who's facing similar challenges. Glad to hear you're doing better now.
Oh God, my memory is so bad. I know that I have been in and out of depression basically my whole life, but I know that as a fact. I barely remember anything from that time, people I knew, therapists I went to. My theory is that it is some sort of protective measure, but not being able to remember what I did yesterday or what a movie was about can be the weirdest experience.
I can relate to that. Forgetting parts of your life because of tough times can feel odd. It's like there's a barrier between who you were and who you are now. Sometimes, it feels like your mind is just trying to help you out by blocking out the bad stuff. But it leaves gaps. Not remembering normal stuff can be frustrating too. It's a strange balance between protection and confusion.
It's crazy for me. I've dealt with depression a couple times. One of them led me down a dark path that I shouldn't have survived. I remember everything from those times though, every decision I made that led me further into depression. I remember everything I did to get myself out of those bouts as well. I'm currently dealing with a lot, mostly due to just losing my identity through my career. I'll get back on track soon, but I'm definitely at a very low point. My brothers keep checking on me and pushing me to make the changes I need to, though, so that helps.
It sounds like you've been through a lot. It's tough to face those feelings and fight through them. Losing a sense of identity is hard, especially when it's tied to work. It's good that your brothers are there for you. Having support makes a difference. Just take it one day at a time, and focus on what makes you feel better. Things can get better with the right steps.
I have ADHD, aphantasia, and depression. I don't store memories in visual ways like most people. My memories are more like data in a computer or a list of things that happened, not a movie. So my memories are inadequate in the first place, but I also have serious memory loss issues. I can't remember most of what happened past about 2 months back, though my memories of more recent events are also affected. I remember facts extremely well. If I read something that I find interesting, my brain stores it. But apparently my brain doesn't think my own life is interesting at all because it chucks those memories straight in the trash. It causes a lot of issues in my life. There have been tons of awkward incidents where people get offended that I don't remember them, and I feel really bad, but I have no clue who they are. I forget what doctors have told me to do. My family gets frustrated having to tell me things again. My friends from childhood are sad that I don't remember our adventures.
That sounds tough. Not being able to recall personal memories like others is a challenge, especially when it affects relationships. It's understandable why people might feel hurt or frustrated. It's like being in a conversation where you keep getting lost. Remembering facts but not personal experiences must feel really isolating. I can see how that would lead to some awkward moments. It's a lot to manage, but sharing makes it easier, I guess.
Me too. I remember telling a concerned friend who suggested it might be depression. I'm not sad. I'm just pissed off all the time. If I though about it, my anger was fueled by dissatisfaction with my life and resentment of anyone who didn't feel that way. If a cashier smiled when they said, "Good morning," I would think, what the hell are they smiling about? How can they be happy? Life is a cesspool. Ugh.
I can relate to that feeling. There are times when anger clouds everything. It's easy to project that dissatisfaction onto others, especially when you're in a dark place. I've had those moments too, where I just don't get how people can be cheerful. It feels isolating when you're caught in that cycle. Recognizing it is the first step, but it doesn't make the anger go away easily. It's a process.
Hygiene, my therapist, said it's very common in depression because you think it's something that only affects you. So you can let hygiene go, and you're only hurting yourself, really. It's one less thing you have to do every day, one less thing to worry about, one thing you cannot do, and get more free time for other things. For me, it's not brushing my teeth. I can skip that and get a little bit of time back in the morning, and it only hurts me in the end. It doesn't affect anybody else.
I get that. When you're in a tough spot mentally, small tasks like hygiene can feel like a chore. It's easy to think skipping them won't matter to anyone else. But in the end, it just impacts your well-being. It's kind of a cycle you get stuck in. You want more free time but end up feeling worse. Finding that balance can be tricky when you're not feeling great.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love,